The rain poured down like a relentless curse, drumming against the windows and walls of the old mansion. Emily huddled under a blanket, trying to distract herself with a book. But the sound of the rain was hypnotic, and she found herself staring out the window, watching the droplets slide down the glass like tears. As the night wore on, the storm grew stronger. The wind howled through the halls, creaking the floorboards and making the lights flicker. Emily's nerves were on edge, and she couldn't shake the feeling that something was watching her. Suddenly, a loud crash of thunder boomed outside, making Emily jump. She spilled her tea, and the cup shattered on the floor. As she bent to pick up the pieces, she noticed something strange. The front door was open, creaking gently in the wind. Emily was certain she had closed it before heading to the living room. A chill ran down her spine as she approached the door. Who, or what, could have opened it? She pushed it shut, but as she turned to walk away, she felt a presence behind her. As the night wore on, Emily's fear turned to dread. She tried to distract herself with TV, but the static-filled screen seemed to mock her. The wind died down, and an oppressive silence fell over the mansion. Emily's skin crawled as she felt eyes upon her. She tried to shake off the feeling, telling herself it was just her imagination. But then, she heard her name, Emily. The voice was low and raspy, seeming to come from all around her. She spun around, but there was no one there. The voice whispered again, "I'm waiting for you." Emily's heart racing, she tried to flee, but her feet felt heavy, as if rooted to the spot. And then, the lights flickered and died. Emily was plunged into darkness, the whispers growing deafening. She stumbled through the darkness, desperate to find a way out. But as she reached the door, she realized she wasn't alone. Something was waiting for you. Emily, heart racing, she tried to flee, but her feet felt heavy, as if rooted to the spot. And then, the lights flickered and died. Emily was plunged into darkness, the whispers growing deafening. She stumbled through the darkness, desperate to find a way out. But as she reached the door, she realized she wasn't alone. Something was waiting for her on the other side. As Emily's fingers brushed against the door handle, she felt a chill run down her spine. The whispers seemed to grow louder, more urgent. She hesitated for a moment, wondering if she should open the door or stay hidden in the darkness. With a surge of adrenaline, Emily pushed open the door and stepped out into the night. The rain had stopped, leaving behind the eerie silence. The moon cast long shadows across the ground, making it seem like dark figures lurked just out of sight. Suddenly, Emily saw a figure standing in the distance. It was shrouded in shadows, its features indistinguishable. The figure began to move towards her, its pace slow and deliberate. Emily's heart was racing as the figure drew closer. She tried to run, but her legs felt heavy, as if rooted to the spot. The figure loomed over her, its presence suffocating. And then, everything went black. Emily's eyes fluttered open, and she found herself in a room she didn't recognize. The walls were a dull gray, and the air was thick with the scent of disinfectant. She tried to sit up, but a wave of pain washed over her, forcing her back onto the bed. As she looked around, she saw a figure standing in the corner of the room. It was a woman with a kind face and a gentle smile. "Welcome back, Emily," she said softly. Emily's mind was foggy, and she couldn't remember how she ended up in this place. "Where am I?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. The woman approached her, a clipboard in hand. "You're in a hospital, Emily. You've been here for a few days. You had a terrible accident." Emily's memories began to flood back, the storm, the old mansion, the whispers in the darkness. But something didn't feel right. The woman's words seemed rehearsed. "Who are you?" Emily asked, her eyes narrowing. The woman's smile faltered for a moment before she regained her composure. "I'm your nurse. I'll be taking care of you during your stay here." But Emily wasn't convinced. There was something about the woman's eyes that seemed off. As the days passed, Emily grew more and more uneasy. The nurse's words seemed laced with an ulterior motive, and the hospital itself felt like a prison. Emily's memories of the accident were hazy, but she knew she hadn't been in a car crash or any ordinary accident. She began to notice strange inconsistencies in the nurse's stories and the hospital's procedures. The doctors seemed evasive when she asked questions, and the medication they gave her made her feel groggy and disoriented. One night, Emily decided she'd had enough. She waited until the nurse was distracted, then snuck out of her room and into the hospital's corridors. The fluorescent lights overhead seemed to hum with an ominous energy as she searched for answers. She stumbled upon a door marked, "Authorized personnel only." Emily's curiosity got the better of her, and she pushed the door open. What she found on the other side would change everything. Here's the continuation. Beyond the door, Emily found a narrow stairway leading down into darkness. The air grew colder as she descended, and the silence was oppressive. At the bottom, she discovered a series of dimly lit rooms filled with old medical equipment and dusty files. Emily's heart racing, she began to sift through the files. They were patient records, but not just any patients. They were all people who had been admitted to the hospital under mysterious circumstances, just like her. As she read through the files, Emily realized that the hospital was conducting some kind of secret experiment. The patients were being subjected to strange treatments, and the medical staff was hiding the truth. Suddenly, Emily heard footsteps coming from the stairway. The nurse's voice echoed through the corridor, "Emily, what are you doing down here?" Emily knew she had to get out, but as she turned to run, she saw something that made her blood run cold. A file with her own name on it, detailing her own treatment. Emily's heart sank as she read the details of her own treatment. She was a test subject, a pawn in some sinister game. The nurse's voice grew louder, closer. With a surge of adrenaline, Emily grabbed the files and ran. She dashed up the stairs, the nurse hot on her heels. Emily burst through the door and into the hospital corridor, weaving through the crowds of patients and staff. She didn't dare look back, fearing what she might see. Emily's only thought was to escape, to get as far away from the hospital as possible. She reached the entrance and pushed through the doors, gasping in the cool night air. Freedom! But as she looked back at the hospital, she saw something that made her question everything. The building seemed to loom over her, its windows like empty eyes staring back. And on the wall, in letters that seemed to shift and writhe like living things, a message: "You will never leave." Emily's legs pumped as she sprinted away from the hospital. She didn't know where she was going, but she knew she had to keep moving. The streets blurred together in a chaotic mess of lights and sounds. As she ran, Emily felt a creeping sense of dread. She glanced over her shoulder, expecting to see the nurse or some other pursuer. But there was no one, or so she thought. Suddenly, Emily's phone buzzed in her pocket. She pulled it out, and a text message flashed on the screen: "You can't escape." The words seemed to sear themselves into her mind. Emily's heart racing, she kept running, but the message seemed to echo in her mind: "You can't escape." Emily's legs burned as she ran through the streets. She didn't know where she was going, but she knew she had to keep moving. The text message had unsettled her, making her wonder if she was truly alone. As she turned a corner, Emily saw a figure standing under a streetlight. It was a woman with a kind face, but her eyes seemed to hold a deep sadness. "Emily," the woman said softly, "I've been looking for you." Emily's instincts screamed at her to run, but something about the woman's words resonated. Maybe it was the desperation in her voice or the genuine concern in her eyes. "Who are you?" Emily asked, her voice barely above a whisper. The woman hesitated before answering. "I'm someone who can help you, but we have to get out of here, now." The woman grabbed Emily's hand, and they sprinted through the streets. Emily didn't know where they were going, but she trusted this stranger. As they ran, the city seemed to blur around them. Emily's heart pounded in her chest, and her breath came in ragged gasps. Finally, they reached a small car parked on the outskirts of town. The woman unlocked the doors, and Emily slid into the passenger seat. "Who are you?" Emily asked again, her eyes locked on the woman's face. "My name is Sarah," the woman replied, starting the engine. "I'm someone who knows what's going on, and I'll help you uncover the truth." As they drove away from the city, Emily felt a glimmer of hope. Maybe, just maybe, she could escape the darkness that had consumed her life. But as they hit the highway, Emily noticed a car following them. Its headlights seemed to bore into the back of their car, filling her with a sense of dread. The car followed them, its headlights casting an ominous glow on the road ahead. Emily's heart sank as she realized they were being pursued. Sarah's eyes flicked to the rearview mirror, her expression grim. "Hold on," she said, her voice tight with tension. She floored it, and the car surged forward. Emily's stomach dropped as they sped down the highway, the pursuing car keeping pace. As they careened through the night, Emily's fear gave way to adrenaline. She felt alive, but also trapped. Suddenly, Sarah took a sharp turn, and the car skidded onto a dirt road. The pursuing car followed, its tires screeching. "Where are we going?" Emily asked, her voice shaking. Sarah's reply was cryptic: "Somewhere safe. Or at least, somewhere we can figure out what's going on." The car bounced along the dirt road, throwing Emily against the seatbelt. She held on tight, her heart racing with anticipation. As they crested a hill, Emily saw a building in the distance, an old farmhouse, its windows dark and foreboding. The car pulled up to the farmhouse, and Sarah killed the engine. Emily's ears rang in the sudden silence. As they stepped out of the car, Emily noticed the farmhouse seemed abandoned. The windows were boarded up, and the door hung crookedly on its hinges. Sarah led Emily inside, her flashlight casting eerie shadows on the walls. The air was thick with dust and decay. "This place has been empty for years," Sarah said, her voice low. "But it's safe. For now." As they settled in, Emily realized she knew almost nothing about Sarah. "Why are you helping me?" she asked, her eyes searching Sarah's face. Sarah's expression softened. "I've been through something similar. I know what it's like to be pursued, to be hunted." Emily's curiosity was piqued. "What happened to you?" Sarah hesitated, her eyes clouding over. "It's a long story, but I'll tell you everything. Just know that we're in this together now." As they settle in, Emily realized she knew almost nothing about Sarah. "Why are you helping me?" she asked, her eyes searching Sarah's face. Sarah's expression softened. "I've been through something similar. I know what it's like to be pursued, to be hunted." Emily's curiosity was piqued. "What happened to you?" Sarah hesitated, her eyes clouding over. "It's a long story, but I'll tell you everything. Just know that we're in this together now." As they huddled in the darkness, Emily felt a sense of unease. They might be safe for now, but the unknown dangers lurking outside threatened to destroy their fragile sense of security. Sarah's eyes seemed to glaze over as she began to speak, her voice barely above a whisper. "I was a patient at the hospital too," she said. "I was part of the same experiment as you." Emily's eyes widened in shock. "What did they do to you?" Sarah's gaze drifted away, her eyes fixed on some distant memory. "They did things to my mind, to my memories. They made me forget who I was." Sarah grabbed Emily's hand, and they ran through the farmhouse, searching for an escape route. The footsteps grew louder, closer. As they reached the back door, Sarah peered outside, her eyes scanning the darkness. "It's clear," she whispered. They sprinted across the yard, the night air cool and damp. Emily's heart pounded in her chest as they ran towards the woods. Suddenly, figures emerged from the shadows, their faces obscured by darkness. Sarah pulled Emily behind her, her eyes locked on the pursuers. "We have to keep moving," Sarah said, her voice low and urgent. As they plunged into the woods, the trees seemed to close in around them. The pursuers were closing in, their footsteps crashing through the underbrush. Emily's breath came in ragged gasps as they ran, the darkness seeming to swallow them whole. And then, a figure stepped out from behind a tree, its eyes glowing with an otherworldly light. The figure loomed over them, its eyes burning with an ethereal intensity. Emily felt a creeping sense of dread as she gazed into those eyes. Sarah stood frozen, her eyes locked on the entity. "What do you want?" she demanded, her voice firm. The entity didn't respond. Instead, it reached out a hand, its fingers stretching towards Emily. Sarah pushed Emily behind her, shielding her from the entity's grasp. "Don't touch her," she warned. The entity's gaze flicked to Sarah, and for a moment, Emily thought she saw a glimmer of recognition. But then, the entity's eyes returned to their inhuman glow. Suddenly, the entity spoke, its voice like a gentle breeze in Emily's mind. "We mean you no harm," it said. "We want to help." Emily's skepticism warred with her desperation. Could this entity be trusted? As she hesitated, the entity reached out again, its hand hovering inches from Emily's face. The entity's hand touched Emily's forehead, and a flood of images burst into her mind. She saw the hospital, the experiments, and the sinister forces behind them. But she also saw something more, a hidden world, a realm of beings like the entity, who had been watching over her. The entity withdrew its hand, and Emily stumbled backward, her mind reeling. "What does it mean?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Sarah's eyes were wide with wonder. "They're the guardians," she said. "They've been protecting us, guiding us." The entity nodded, its eyes gleaming with a soft light. "We've been trying to keep you safe," it said. "But the forces against us are powerful. We need your help." Emily's mind was spinning. What could she possibly do to help? But as she looked into the entity's eyes, she felt a spark of determination. She would do whatever it took to uncover the truth and bring down those responsible. "What do you need me to do?" Emily asked, her voice firm. The entity's gaze locked onto hers, and Emily felt a surge of purpose. The entity's eyes seemed to bore into Emily's soul as it spoke. "We need you to infiltrate the hospital," it said. "We need you to gather evidence of their wrongdoing and bring it to the world." Emily's heart sank. Going back to the hospital was the last thing she wanted to do, but she knew she had to do it. Sarah nodded, her eyes determined. "I'll go with her," she said. "We'll get the evidence and bring it to the authorities." The entity nodded, its gaze flicking between Emily and Sarah. "Be careful," it warned. "The forces against us are powerful. They will stop at nothing." As the entity vanished into the night, Emily felt a sense of trepidation. She knew what lay ahead would be difficult, but she was determined to see it through. Sarah turned to her, a small smile on her face. "Ready?" she asked. Emily nodded, her heart pounding in her chest. Together, they set off towards the hospital, ready to face wherever. The men threw Emily into the van, and she was taken away. But she knew it was over. The evidence was out, and the hospital's secrets would soon be exposed. Days later, the hospital was shut down, and the doctors and nurses involved were arrested. Emily was hailed as a whistleblower, and she finally felt free. Sarah visited her in hiding, a smile on her face. "You did it," she said. "You brought them down." Emily's eyes welled up with tears. "We did it together," she corrected. As they hugged, Emily knew she'd found a true friend and ally in Sarah. Together, they'd faced the darkness and emerged victorious. Emily and Sarah sat on a beach, watching the sunset. They'd been through so much, but they'd made it out alive. "I never thought I'd see the day," Emily said, her voice filled with emotion. Sarah nodded. "We did it. We exposed the truth." As they sat in comfortable silence, Emily felt a sense of peace wash over her. She was finally free to start anew. "What now?" Sarah asked, turning to Emily with a curious expression. Emily smiled. "Now, we rebuild. We start fresh." Sarah grinned. "Sounds like a plan." As the sun dipped below the horizon, Emily knew she was ready for whatever came next. She was no longer a victim, she was a survivor. The end. Dangers lay ahead. Emily and Sarah crept through the shadows, their eyes fixed on the hospital's imposing structure. They had been planning this moment for what felt like an eternity. As they reached the entrance, Sarah produced a keycard and swiped it through the reader. The doors slid open, and they slipped inside. The hospital was quiet, the only sound the soft hum of machinery and the distant beep of monitors. Emily's heart pounded in her chest as they made their way to the records department. Sarah worked quickly, accessing the computer system and downloading the evidence they needed. Emily stood watch, her eyes scanning the corridors for any sign of danger. Suddenly, footsteps echoed down the hallway. Emily's heart skipped a beat as a nurse turned the corner, her eyes widening in surprise. "What are you doing here?" the nurse demanded, her voice firm. Emily and Sarah exchanged a glance. They knew they had to act fast. The nurse's eyes narrowed as she took a step closer. "I know you," she said, her voice dripping with malice. "You're the patient who escaped." Emily stood tall, her heart racing. "We're here for the truth," she said, her voice firm. The nurse sneered. "You'll never leave this hospital alive," she spat. Sarah stepped forward, her eyes flashing with determination. "We have proof," she said. We know what's been going on. The nurse's expression faltered for a moment, and Emily saw a glimmer of fear in her eyes. But then, her face hardened. You'll never expose us, she said. With a swift motion, the nurse reached for the alarm button. Emily and Sarah knew they had to act fast. Sarah grabbed the nurse's arm, preventing her from pressing the alarm. Emily joined in, and together they struggled to subdue the nurse. The fight was intense, but they managed to overpower the nurse. Sarah quickly bound and gagged her, ensuring she couldn't alert anyone. With the nurse silenced, Emily and Sarah grabbed the evidence and made a run for the exit. Their hearts pounded as they sprinted through the corridors, the sound of footsteps and alarms growing louder. They burst through the doors, gasping in the cool night air. Freedom was within reach. As they ran across the parking lot, Emily felt a sense of relief wash over her. They'd done it. They'd exposed the hospital's secrets. But just as they reached the car, a black van screeched to a halt beside them, blocking their escape. The van's doors slid open, and men in black suits poured out, surrounding Emily and Sarah. They were trapped. One of the men stepped forward, his eyes cold and calculating. "You're coming with us," he said, his voice devoid of emotion. Emily and Sarah exchanged a desperate glance. They knew they couldn't take on the men in a physical fight. Sarah's eyes locked onto the evidence in Emily's hand. "Give it to me," she whispered. Emily hesitated, then handed over the files. Sarah quickly scanned the documents and sent them to a secure email address. "Now, let's give them a show," Sarah whispered, her eyes glinting with determination. Sarah started shouting, drawing the attention of the men. "You're never taking us alive," she screamed, struggling against the men. Emily joined in, playing along. Together, they created a scene, distracting the men long enough for Sarah to slip away unnoticed. As the men dragged Emily and Sarah towards the van, Sarah managed to slip free and escape into the night. Emily was left to face the men alone. The leader's eyes narrowed. "You're coming with us," he repeated. But Emily knew Sarah had gotten the evidence they do want. She smiled defiantly. The stormy night *. The darkness outside was suffocating, and the thunderstorm raging at midnight made it feel like the world was ending. Rain lashed against the windows of the old mansion, threatening to shatter the panes at any moment. Sophia Ellis, a renowned paranormal investigator, stood at the window, her eyes fixed on the turbulent sky. She had always been drawn to the supernatural, and this mansion, rumored to be one of the most haunted places in the country, was the perfect place to test her theories. As she gazed out into the storm, a sudden flash of lightning illuminated the dark sky, and Sophia saw a figure standing in the garden. Her heart skipped a beat as she strained her eyes to see if it was just her imagination playing tricks on her. But the figure vanished as quickly as it appeared, leaving Sophia wondering if she had really seen it. Sophia's curiosity got the better of her, and she decided to explore the mansion further. She grabbed her flashlight and ventured into the depths of the house, her footsteps echoing off the walls. As she turned a corner, she stumbled upon a door that seemed out of place. The door was old and rusted, with a large iron knocker in the shape of a lion's head. Sophia felt an inexplicable pull towards the door and pushed it open, revealing a room that seemed frozen in time. The room was small, with walls lined with old bookshelves and a single, flickering candle casting eerie shadows on the walls. Sophia's eyes widened as she saw a diary lying open on a desk, the pages yellowed with age. The entries were cryptic, but one sentence stood out: "They're coming for us, and the storm will bring them." Sophia's skin crawled as she wondered who had written these words and what they meant. Sophia's eyes scanned the pages, searching for more clues. The diary belonged to a young woman named Elizabeth, who had lived in the mansion over a century ago. As Sophia read on, she discovered that Elizabeth had been experiencing terrifying occurrences, doors slamming shut, disembodied voices, and an overwhelming sense of dread. The entries became increasingly erratic, and Sophia realized that Elizabeth had been descending into madness. One passage stood out: "I've seen them in the storm, their faces twisted in malevolence. They whisper my name, calling me to join them." Sophia shivered, feeling a chill run down her spine. She wondered if Elizabeth's experiences were connected to the strange occurrences she had witnessed in the garden. As Sophia continued to read, the candle on the desk began to flicker wildly, casting eerie shadows on the walls. She felt a presence behind her and spun around, but there was no one there. Suddenly, the whispering started, faint at first, but growing louder. The voices seemed to be coming from all around her, whispering her name, Sophia. Sophia. She tried to shake off the feeling of unease, telling herself it was just the wind or her imagination. But the whispers grew more urgent, more insistent. Sophia knew she had to get out of there, but her feet seemed rooted to the spot. The whispers grew louder, more menacing, and Sophia felt herself being pulled towards the door. She tried to resist, but an unseen force propelled her forward. As she stumbled out of the room, the door slammed shut behind her, and she heard the sound of rusty hinges creaking. The storm outside seemed to be intensifying, with thunder booming like cannons and lightning illuminating the dark corridors. Sophia ran down the hallway, desperate to escape the whispers and the feeling of being hunted. She reached her bedroom door and flung it open, slamming it shut behind her. Leaning against the door, she tried to catch her breath. But as she looked around, she realized she wasn't alone. A figure stood in the shadows, watching her. Sophia's heart racing, she fumbled for the light switch. The room was bathed in a warm glow, and she saw the figure more clearly. It was a woman with long, curly hair and a white dress that seemed to glow in the dim light. Sophia's initial fear gave way to curiosity as she approached the woman. The woman didn't move or speak, but Sophia sensed a deep sadness emanating from her. As she looked closer, Sophia saw the resemblance, the same features, the same eyes. It was Elizabeth, the woman who had written the diary. Sophia felt a shiver run down her spine as she realized that Elizabeth's spirit was trapped in the mansion, and she was trying to communicate something. Sophia's fear dissipated, replaced by a sense of empathy for the trapped spirit. She reached out a hand, and Elizabeth's ghostly form seemed to lean towards her. Sophia felt a sudden chill as Elizabeth's voice whispered in her mind, "Find the letters, Sophia. Find the truth." Sophia's eyes widened as she understood. Elizabeth was trying to tell her something important. She remembered the cryptic entries in the diary and realized that there must be more to the story. Sophia's determination grew, and she knew she had to uncover the secrets hidden within the mansion's walls. Sophia's search began in the library, where she found an old bookshelf with a strange symbol etched into the wood. As she pressed the symbol, the bookshelf swung open, revealing a hidden room. Inside, she found a trunk filled with letters, tied with a faded ribbon. Sophia's heart skipped a beat as she untied the ribbon and began to read. The letters were from Elizabeth's lover, a man named Alexander, who had been presumed dead. But the letters revealed a dark truth. Alexander had made a pact with a malevolent entity to save his life, and Elizabeth had become entangled in his web of darkness. Sophia's skin crawled as she realized the true horror that had unfolded in the mansion. As Sophia read on, she discovered the horrific truth. Alexander's pact had unleashed a malevolent force that consumed the mansion, trapping Elizabeth's spirit and dooming future inhabitants to relive the terror. The letters hinted at a ritual to break the curse, but it required a sacrifice. Sophia's determination turned to dread as she realized she might be the only one who could stop the darkness. Suddenly, the lights flickered and died, plunging the room into darkness. Sophia heard footsteps, heavy and deliberate, coming from the hallway. The whispers returned, urging her to complete the ritual. Sophia knew she had to act fast to survive the night. Sophia lit a candle, casting eerie shadows on the walls. She read the final letter, which revealed the ritual's location, the garden where she had seen the figure. With a deep breath, Sophia stepped into the stormy night, the wind howling around her. She reached the garden, where a dark shape waited. As lightning illuminated the figure, Sophia saw Alexander's twisted form, his eyes glowing with an otherworldly energy. The malevolent entity spoke through him, demanding Sophia's soul to break the curse. Sophia refused, and a fierce struggle ensued. The storm raged on, but Sophia's determination and courage ultimately prevailed. With a final burst of strength, Sophia shattered the curse, freeing Elizabeth's spirit and banishing the darkness. As the storm subsided, Sophia stood victorious, but shaken. She knew she'd never forget the horrors she'd faced in the mansion, and the secrets she'd uncovered would haunt her forever. The end.